And we do have some new people joining in, and it's great to see that every month, and also to see some familiar faces. So we're going to have some time for a little bit of Q&A, with our guest speaker and that. But first off, we want to kind of say, all right, what has this group done in the last month? And what I mean by what have we done, there have been some success stories, and obviously we don't have our own publication or anything that we're putting out there of things where we have saved patients time and money, things where we have really helped patients move and feel better and actually get access to healthcare. And so I wanted to take, maybe the first 10, 15 minutes and say, what is something that someone has experienced this month where you have helped somebody navigate the system, help build this new bridge or this medical ecosystem that we're working on to be better. And, so I just wanted to open it up in that fashion and go from there. And I'll come back to the rest of the agenda for the evening, but just wanted to see, what kind of success stories have we had this month?
I'll go first. 15 minutes today. My partner in crime saved a plan $60,000 on Biktarvy.
How?
There is patient assistance money available for people who make less than a certain amount of money, and we made sure that we work with the plan to not have a drug covered on the plan, so that it could go into a patient assistance program. There's a lot of those, and we'll talk a little bit about them and answer questions. I'm gonna have a limited scope today about some things about drug pricing, but we can open it up in the Q&A. But patient assistance.
So let me get that straight. That was $60,000 in 10 minutes.
15.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to top dollar per hour on that one. Very good.
I'll take the next one. So we had a pretty amazing experience this last week, or 2 weeks ago now, with a patient who was scheduled for a melanoma removal down in Tucson. And we got an email regarding this planned procedure. This surgery was scheduled at a Banner facility, which usually means lots of unaccounted for dollars and not necessarily any improvement in care. And so we made a few phone calls and found a surgeon here in town who was extremely well qualified to do this same procedure. And I was able to connect with that patient and hook them up with the surgeon here in town. We were able to schedule the surgery for the same day that she already had it scheduled, but she drove up here to do it. And the surgery was probably going to cost somewhere in the $20,000 to $30,000 range through the Banner facility. The patient's burden of that was going to be up to $10,000. And with this redirection that we were able to make, the total surgery cost was $7,000, and the patient had zero responsibility. So the patient didn't have to pay anything, and the plan saved, thousands of dollars. The patient saved thousands of dollars, and she was very pleased with her care. And it was all just a matter of making some phone calls.
And what else happened with the provider?
With the surgeon who did it, he actually probably ended up making about double the money, or maybe more, than he would have if he was to take this through a regular insurance plan. So the surgeon actually made more money, and is going to be excited to do this for us again. He probably maybe feels like he was taking advantage of the situation, but it's totally great because he's getting paid well, and everybody else is saving money, and the patient is getting the highest quality care possible. The only person who loses is the facility that was charging too much in the first place.
Very
This
cool.
is Doug Bang at Ortho Arizona. I'd throw some easy softballs out there. Number one is we moved some agreements away from banner $3,000 per MRIs to our lofty $350 MRIs, which people think are still overpriced, but good move. Secondly, we entered into an Optum bundle with Oasis Hospital for total joints, which is the professional fee is just fine, not great, but fine. But the facility fee in that one is much less. And the third, this stuff is coming in waves. We are in close finalization with Surgery Plus, Bridge Health, and a number of others. And we're on both professional fee, and we're also taking some of that to both surgery centers and the 2 orthopedic specialty hospitals that we work at. So there's again, easy money is not the right word, but you guys get that. So.
But,
Hey, Doug.
and Doug, as you're looking at that, is that getting the providers excited a little bit when you bring those things to them?
Yeah, well, and I know, like Dr. Johnson will say, you go to medical school, or in our case, surgery school, to do your craft. This other stuff is in the way. So that does excite them. They want to do that. And even we've had, Dr. Keith was on here from Oklahoma City. He's even reached out because there were a few Phoenix patients driving to Oklahoma City for some ambulatory surgery, which, you think about it, we're the 5th largest city in the United States, makes no sense. But it is what it is, and if we don't step up, so the surgeons are trying to, from that end, like, I don't know if getting control back of medicine from big health or corporate health is their word. It's a step, maybe a small one, but it's a step in that direction.
And that's a great segue. Oh, Carl, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Hey, Doug, I want to say something. I don't know if you remember me. We were supposed to connect, and COVID got in the way. I came out to the Ortho Forum in Phoenix and spoke twice at y'all's platform. You may not recognize me, but I never have caught back up with you. Do you remember me?
I remember you well. Sans the facial hair. I can't grow hair, no matter how hard I try. So
I'll call you. That's good to see. I'm going, I know that guy, and he's sitting there talking about
that. Maybe kudos to this group, starting with you, Tim, Dr. Johnson, Carl, and many others, that, orthopedics, bias acknowledged, is not a simple specialty of medicine, but what we're talking about here has a whole different array of complexity. And if this group wasn't supportive in your individual ways, we couldn't do what we're doing, So I'm going to be calling, I'm sure, on many of you as we go forward, just if nothing else, moral support and hold our hand, but also technical support. And as Carl noted, even nationally, the Ortho Forum, which is the larger trade group of orthopedic groups across the U.S., is moving into this area. And these are privately owned physician groups, is moving into it strongly for a lot of the reasons. And our large counterpart is Midwest Orthopedics at Rush Medical Center in Chicago, and they literally have kings and queens coming to them. Well, for us, our international is Canadians and some Mexican well-to-dos, but just think. So thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, too, you were on that call, I bet, with Karen a week or so ago. on the whole Rosetta thing, which is stuff we kicked off when we came out and spoke. So,
And Karen is, she is phenomenal.
yeah, Karen's my butt. We have a call every 2 weeks. It's my favorite time of the week, 2:00 on every other Friday. So, yeah, she and I talk all the time. We've tried to do some work with some ortho groups down in Florida and some other things. And I'll give you a shout back. I don't want to monopolize anybody's time. Tim, I could tell 100 stories of the things we're doing, and especially in that school district down in Florida, but I don't want to bore anybody because, I don't want to show up Bill Miller saving 1.9 million versus 60,000. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but y'all keep going.
Well, and I think Doug brings up a great line where, it's little things that we're doing, but it's the cumulative effect that we're going to have on the environment. And quite simply, we're just getting patients into healthcare. And, onesies and twosies, may seem like very little right now, but I bet if we took a little bit more time, there are quite a few more that we've done. And to that end, we want to do something with this group in between sessions. And as such, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Johnson. He's going to talk about having a Google page, not a Google page. That's not the right term.
It's a Google group.
This is about time where Tim does not speak technical. Turn over to the young guys.
It's a Google group, and it's basically functions as just an email list. So we are assuming that everybody on this call is going to be interested in being on this list. It should not be very spammy. It will just be the members of this group will have the opportunity to share success stories throughout the week, and they'll also be able to reach out for resources from the group. So, hey, I've got a patient who needs a surgery. Can anybody help me with that? Doug Vane is going to be able to see that and chime in. So it'll be for questions and for success stories and other communication of the group. And you will be automatically invited. And if you choose to unsubscribe, you'll have the option to do so. But that will be separate from the emails that go out with your invitation to these meetings. But it should give us an opportunity to talk during the month between the meetings. And with that, I'd like to just introduce our guest here today. We've been really excited about having Bill be our speaker and have planned on this for a while here. Bill Miller is the CEO of Drexy and has led the company since January 2019 during an explosive growth period. Drexy is one of the fastest growing mid-market pharmacy benefits companies, delivering honesty and value to customers. Mr. Miller has been an active investor and advisor to select companies in Phoenix and serves as an entrepreneur in residence for the ASU Startup Mill. And he was the CEO of Vomeris Innovations, a novel medical device company. He was also the founder and CEO of Auto X-Ray from its beginning to its acquisition by SPX Bosch. And he has been featured in Popular Mechanics, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and other publications. He was selected as an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and received a Spirit of Enterprise Award from the W.P. Carey School of Business at ASU. And he holds a computer engineering degree from the University of Arizona. And we've been really excited about having him here because the idea of transparency is central to what we're doing here. And Bill has many times helped us understand the multiple ways that transparency is being muddied in both the PBM industry and healthcare at large. So we are excited to hear, Bill, what you have to teach us about transparency and how we can improve healthcare as a whole by finding and using transparent market solutions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. Jackie, I'm not hiding money. It's somebody else. It's interesting. I love hearing that bio. It's almost like I wrote it. And to get from ASU, being a U of A guy is not an easy process for all of us Phoenix folks. It's like getting, being a Georgia Bulldog and getting an award from Florida. You bet, the Gators. But transparency was really interesting. Just a little bit about my background. You hear that I've been in Phoenix for most of my life, and working in all sorts of tech industries, and came to Drexy from AZ Crown. And so for all of the Phoenix people, AZ Crown is a family office, private equity company that was founded by Tim and Eric Crown, who founded Insight Enterprises. So for any of you who may or may not know Insight, they started the company on $2,500 of credit card debt, and they built it into a Fortune 500 company. Really, really one of the huge success stories here in the Phoenix area. And so I've known them for 32 years, since some of their beginnings. And I was calling on them as a sales guy when I was 29 years old, and got a chance to share in some of that growth story, and then joined them later on as we began investing in companies in Phoenix. And one of our portfolio companies you may have seen in the news is called Freestar. And Freestar was ranked the #1 fastest growing company on the Inc. 5000 list this last year. They do ad tech. And part of the investment thesis of AZ Crown is investing companies that are in explosive growth areas that make a difference and that we can scale. And when we ran across Drexy, we looked at what is the market, what are the macro drivers in the industry that would make sense to invest in this company. And it really was this massive move that we see coming over the next 5 years to transparency. And we identified this in 2018. And over the last several years, you've seen this push. You've seen the executive orders in transparency. You've seen this demand for transparency with hospitals. You've seen it with insurance companies. You've seen it with pharmacy. And we had this thought about this macro shift from what is our traditional healthcare system into what we consider a transparent environment. So I look across the scope of all the people on this call, all of the people that I met at the Free Market Medical Conference in Dallas a couple of years ago, and the folks that I've been involved with all have this similar tenet to work within the free market principles, to strip away some of the obfuscation in the marketplace and kind of tear away at that. And so Drexy, as a PBM, was participating in this and said, hey, listen, let's be part of transparency. But what I wanted to do today, and I will take questions from any angle you want after we finish this and we talk a little bit about a specific topic. Sky's the limit. Whatever you want to ask, I'll answer. I'll talk about specific drugs. I'll talk about the industry. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. But I wanted to talk about a few things just to kind of get the conversation going that I think you may know and you may not have seen some of the data. Hey, Tim, can I have sharing ability?
Should be good now.
Bingo. All right, so so you should all see a pricing matrix, yeah? Everybody see that? So this is interesting when you look over the 20 years for inflation adjusted pricing of all of these things. TVs have gone down in price 80%. The top number one thing, hospital services. But the crazy thing is you see from an inflation adjusted rising cost, hospital services, medical care services, and both of these are driving toward this. You look at a hospital services 200% increase, and that's adjusted for inflation. Just crazy. When you think about, we've all seen the statistics on real wage growth being taken by the rise in medical care costs. So now I'm going to bring up just a couple of examples before I dive into a very specific example about what's happening in the marketplace and the obfuscation of pricing, which really is the tenet of how this hidden agenda and the non-free market principles that are being exercised in our industry are driving the cost of, in this instance, pharmacy. So these are payer prices in different hospital systems for 5 drugs. But if you look at this across most brand name drugs, the same examples hold true. It would just become an unwieldy table. But over here on the left, you can see the average sales price for the drug. And then in the hospital system for each one of the 5 major carriers in the BUCAs, the cartels, as referred to as my esteemed friend, Carl Schuessler, the cartels, what they're actually being charged by the hospital. So there's 2 things that go on here. One, the hospital's charging a ton of money to the payer, and of course the payer is charging a ton of money to the employer, but because of the medical loss ratio and some of the incentives, they have no desire to bring this down. And I'll just point out a few of these, but you can see a $2,900 drug that gets charged at the University of Florida at $21,000. Rituxan is I believe that's a cancer drug. It's an $861 drug. You can see its pricing is ranges from the low $1,000 to almost $3,300 or so in here. Avastin, pardon me, gets charged. It's a $700 drug, and it's getting charged at almost $6,000 at Rush University Medical Center to Anthem. So you can see what is this this over here is the transparent price. If you went to a transparent provider, a pass-through PBM that was charging this through a pharmacy network, and the payer was getting the price that's being paid to the pharmacy, these are the prices that would hold true. $83 as opposed to the $943. So this is the perverse pricing that's going on inside our payers. So I want to talk about insulin prices for just a second. And
hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course you can.
And for everybody on this call, you're giving those folks way too much credit calling them payers. The only payers in healthcare, folks, are the employees and the employers. Those folks process claims. They're the processors. And I'll tell you, there's been a reset amongst the ortho forum people, because I sat there on stage with Dr. Johnson. Everybody was there, Tim, and everybody was there. That's the term. So don't give them the credence on the payers.
I'll take that away. The BUC, I'm going to call them the BUCA processors, and they're actually Economic rent seekers. For any of you who watch Dr. Bricker's small videos, he has one on economic rent seeking. Does everybody know what economic rent seeking is? So economic rent seeking, I like to call leeching. They're really just bloodsuckers. So an economic rent seeker is somebody who fits themselves into a chain of commerce where they make profit but add no value. Okay, so think about that. It's somebody in the middle that adds zero value but makes profit. And that really describes so many of the middlemen that sit in this channel in healthcare. The PBMs, certainly the traditional PBMs, they have some amount of value because they process a transaction, but they sit on an economic rent-seeking perspective about 90% of what they do. They make money for something they don't do. When you think about spread pricing, and I'm going to talk about spread pricing, and I'm going to talk about rebates. And I'm going to do it from the aspect of one class of drugs, insulin. Anybody here a diabetic? So diabetics, these drugs have been around for years and years and years. And insulin it's necessary to life for a diabetic. And here's a report. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is a staff report for the Senate Finance Committee. And Carl, I think you've talked with some of the people that were involved in this particular Senate committee. It's the largest Senate committee. And they were working on this particular report for the last couple of years. And they talk about this entire report is on insulin. So rather than go through, it's a 90-page report or whatever, I'll go through a couple of the highlights for you. Number one, insulin prices have gone skyrocketing over the last 10 years, and I'll show you a graph here in just a little while. And Medicare's pricing on insulin, they spent $78 billion on insulin over the 8-year period between 2010 and 2018. And 27 billion of it went to one product, Lantus. 16.5 billion went to Novolog, and 12.3 billion went to Humalog. And I'm going to talk about those two products in particular in just a few moments. Sanofi is the producer of Lantus, and I'm going to show you what their pricing, what's happened with their pricing. But the pricing has continued to go up, and every one of the insulin manufacturers in the industry practice what's known as shadow pricing. So if any of you have looked at pharmacy claims over a period of time, you'll see either Novolog in the claims or you'll see Humalog in the claims. And the interesting thing is, if you go to price the drug out, it's about $285 for a vial of Humalog. It's also about $285 for a price of Novolog. And when Novolog goes up, Humalog goes up. And when Humalog goes up, Novolog goes up. And they have this shadow pricing practice in the industry, and they all end up going together. I don't know if it's an actual backroom, dark of the night agreement that they have, but it certainly feels like it. The board of directors in Novo Nordisk actually voted down a price decrease on their insulin because of the backlash they feared from the middlemen, PBMs, and the cartel processors. How do you like that, Carl? It was originally a bad term. R&D spending. So insulin is a really well-established drug in the marketplace. They used to make it out of porcine pancreas, and it's kind of gone forward to now it's a genetically engineered drug. And R&D on it, to give you an idea, R&D is around $400 million in the industry, whereas advertising is about $2 billion. and the revenue is 22 billion. So it's just crazy when you start to look at some of these things. And I'm going to show you
And it's been available for almost 100 years.
Yeah. I'm going to show you a couple of slides. Let's see here. The first one is the price of insulin paid by employers' employees, which are the payers, right, has gone up 140% over the last 10 years or so. The actual manufacturer's portion of the price has gone down by 41%. This middle part is rebates and spread pricing. Now, we've talked about spread pricing. I imagine everybody here knows what spread pricing is. Just kind of by a show of hands, who doesn't, actually just a voice, because I don't think I can see everybody, but
Go over it again, Bill. We want to hear about spread pricing again.
okay. Spread pricing, I'm just going to give you my own example, and I live it every single quarter. I'm a middle-aged white guy on a statin. I have to take an omega-3 for my triglycerides. Fairly average. Atorvastatin calcium and rosuvastatin calcium are one of the two most prescribed drugs in the country. Whenever you look at the volume of prescriptions of a plan, those two are almost always at the top. And I go to, we have a Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona plan because we're only like 20 people and we can't self-insure. So we have Optum behind Arizona Blue Cross Blue Shield. And when I take my prescription into Walgreens or Fry's or wherever, I go to Fry's and I get a 90-day prescription for rosuvastatin calcium. And because I'm on a high deductible health plan, I have to pay 100% of the cost. That 90-day supply of rosuvastatin is $86 on Optum. I'm also on Lovaza, and there's a generic for it. It's called omega-3 acid ethyl esters. And on Optum, it's $300 for a 90-day supply. Now, I ask them every time, because they have my main card in the system, did you run that on my Drexy card? Because the price that comes from Drexy is the price that is the actual pharmacy price. The $86 prescription is $8.18. The $300 prescription is $60. Now, when you talk about spread, it's a crazy example, but it happens on almost every single drug. I'm going to share really quickly. This is we do analysis on claims for people, and this is a company that we did, and we were talking about the statins. This is atorvastatin calcium, and you can see that here's the pharmacy. It's Rock Mountain, Express Scripts, or Walgreens, or CVS. You can look at what the total claim amount, they're charging $31 for this set of statins, up to $41. And the Drexy price in the same pharmacy, you can see it varies depending on the pharmacy, but it's usually around $8 or $9. If you go shopping to a lower cost pharmacy, it's usually a couple bucks cheaper. But that spread, to give you an idea, in this file is a generic average across every single generic drug that this plan buys in a year. Drexy price, $12.43. The plan paid $48.60. It's a 74% gross margin. And what that means is if you were to go buy something for 26 cents, this PBM is charging you $1. If you buy something for $26, they're charging you $100. That's the spread pricing. And spread pricing, if you go back to this. That's part of this portion for the traditional PBM is spread pricing. The other portion is rebates. Okay. Now, rebates on insulin have been insane. I mean, really crazy. When you look at the price of I'm going to bring it up here really quickly. I'm going to go pull up the price of Humalog. Humalog is a fast-acting insulin, like Dr. Johnson says, been around for about 100 years. And when you look at Humalog, it's $260, $270, $273. You look at Novolog, it's about the same price. And that's for one vial. Usually a normal everyday insulin person needs about 2 vials a month, so it's $600. So you can see they're about the same price. Now, the rebates on this drug are huge, like $180 or so. Express Scripts, Optum, and CVS do not allow this on their formulary. The reason they don't allow, they don't allow the generic on their formulary. There are generics for Novolog and Humalog. The generic for Humalog is called Insulin Lispro. Insulin Lispro for one vial, you saw that, this is $270, $280, is $36 at CVS. Now, that's because we happen to have a really, really great contract with CVS. At the other pharmacies, it goes up to $100, $138, but it's not $270. The generic for Novolog is insulin aspart. The government made these manufacturers come out with insulin generics. They are manufactured by, you can see again the same pricing. They're manufactured by the same people that manufacture the brand name drug. This right here is the Insulin Lispro injection. You can see here on the bottom, you may not, maybe too small, but this is Eli Lilly's logo. So Insulin Lispro is manufactured on the same manufacturing line as Humalog. It comes down the line, it gets put into a vial. The vial comes to the end of the line, and one of the vials goes this way and gets a Humalog Insulin Lispro label, and one of the vials gets just an Insulin Lispro label without the brand name on it. And for that, you can buy it for $36 instead of $284. Now, this is where transparency in the industry would certainly help. They have the lobby or the manufacturers or the PBMs or anybody else involved in this rebate and spread pricing in insulin has kept this secret. Now, the crazy part about the secretness of it is, and I don't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing, but Insulin Lispro was listed as a generic for Humalog. And it is. It's the exact same thing made by Eli Lilly. And it used to say in the data, Metaspan is where we get our data, and we would get this data and it would be marked as the generic. Insulin Lispro or Humalog would have a generic listed. And Novolog has insulin aspart as a generic, but it wasn't listed as a generic. They weren't considered equivalent in the data. So we went to Metaspan and said, you have a problem with the data. This is identical stuff. I mean, absolutely identical stuff. In the next release, we no longer had Humalog having a generic equivalent. It went the other way. Now they're both hidden. So It's that kind of craziness that you see happen. And this is what we're fighting in the industry. That's what we're fighting as members of the Free Market Medical Association. That's what we're fighting as payers, employers, employees, and people who actually pay these bills. We're fighting a system of, I'm just going to say it. It's corruption. This is ridiculous. It's absolute insanity that this stuff is hidden from us. And when you look at the slide, which shows healthcare going, hospital charges going up 200%, adjusted for Medicare, and TVs going down 80%, you know that Americans are some of the best consumers in the world. We know how to consume. We consume more than any other country. We know how to price shop. We know how to quality shop. We know how to look at things. We don't just buzz into a store and say, wow, it's a TV, I'll buy it. We check it out. We look on Amazon, we look at Best Buy, we can go in, we can play around with things. We can decide to bring it, to buy it offline, buy it online, and or we can buy it inside the store, any of these things. But all of these prices and all of these strategies by the PBMs and pharma are there to obfuscate the information we should have, the information we need to make educated choices for our consumption. So that is the absolute. What's funny is when you look at, you can go find these insulins online. If you go search on Novolog, you'll come right to Novo Nordisk's site. If you go to Novo Nordisk, you'll go to their site. If you search on their site for insulin aspart, you'll come up to the brand name Novolog. You do all this searching and everything points back to this expensive brand name. You have to go to nnpi.com. And it doesn't really show up in any indexes to find the information on their generic insulin. You have to go to lilyinsulinlistpro.com, which is the same equivalent for Humalog and insulin aspart, to find their generic, but you won't find it in any of the listings when you search in Google. You won't find it on the Humalog site or the Eli Lilly site. It's on its own separate little lost soul. This is just an example of insulin. But these strategies and these games are rampant through the industry. That's what we're fighting against. That's what we need to pull the covers back on. And so that's part of my mission as a member of this association and appear with you all to fight. And that's kind of what I have prepared. And at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. And again, I'll take questions from any angle you want and answer anything I can for you.
Well, Bill, first of all, thank you. And, we've been trying to come up with ways to create disturbing images in providers' eyes so that they understand what battle they're fighting and how we can actually get people to the table to actually make a difference. So seeing that disparity in pricing is obviously very disturbing. What I'd like to know is, you got into this industry, it looks like a couple years ago, coming from a very technological, background in that. What is the momentum that you've seen, and essentially who are you angering? Who are you pissing off?
Well, it's an interesting, that is a really great question. So let's talk about the constituents inside the industry. You have the payers, which are the employees and employers. You have the processors, which in the healthcare side are the BUCAs. On the PBM side are the big three, which are Express Scripts, Optum, CVS. You have the pharma manufacturers, and you have the pharmacies, right? So all these groups are vying for, their part of the pie. And what's happened with kind of the industry is marketing has been driving the use of brand name drugs. And everybody says, when you talk with one of the big three, I'm just going to call them, Carl, we need a name. We have you have coined the term cartel for the bucas. We need like mini
The evil empire.
cartel or
That's
some
what
of
I
the
used
great-
to call them. Evil empire.
So the PBMs are the evil empire. Okay, so the empire.
The dark side. Yes.
So the empire. Anyway, the traditional PBMs are in the distribution channel governing the pricing, and they are governing what's on formularies. And so pharma manufacturers are trying to get these brand name drugs into the hands of consumers. And what's happened is the pricing disparity is called the gross to net bubble, and it is gigantic. That gross to net bubble is the list price, which is the equivalent with hospital billed charges. It's AWP minus some small amount of money, but it's AWP is the term in the PBM industry. And pharma is trying to drive usage out to these drugs. This last year is the first year that pharma advertising has outstripped pharma research and development. So, pharma says, hey, it takes us so much money to bring a drug to market. So we have all these research and development drugs. And so that's why these drugs are so expensive. They're really, really expensive. And we have all this R&D, and it's really hard to get a drug to market. But the problem is once they get it to market, then they're advertising it, and they're spending more money on advertising to get this thing to the patients than they are on the research and development. Now, add to that the gross to net bubble, the amount of money that they pay the PBMs to have the PBMs push these into the payers, employers. Then it's a disparity that creates an ecosystem that nobody can see. And what's happening right now with payers, with pharma manufacturers, is they say, hey, we can get a copay assistance card. Let's talk about the marketing channel for pharma manufacturers. There's advertising that you see on television all the time, right? I mean, we saw it on Super Bowl, for God's sakes, drug advertising. But you can't turn on a network channel or even a cable channel without seeing some sort of a drug advertisement. Now, that's just the advertising. When you take the financial incentives, pharma is at war with the payers because they want to get expensive drugs onto a plan to be paid by a plan. So you have a pharma manufacturer providing a copay assistance card to a member, an employee, saying, listen, we'll pay your part of it. All you have to do is get onto our website. We're going to keep it secret. It's going to be between us and you. And we're going to give you all of the money you need to pay your portion of the drug. Let's take Humira because it's one of the most well-known examples. Humira has a copay assistance card that's worth $20,000. $20,000 is 30% of the yearly cost of Humira. Humira is a $60,000 a year drug. Now, that $20,000, you take somebody who has a $6,000 max out of pocket, that $20,000 is really only $6,000. But I go in the very first month of my Humira and I all of a sudden meet my deductible. After I've met my deductible and my max out of pocket, using money that AbbVie gave me for the purchase of my portion of Humira, I now have the plan who's on the hook for my rampant, out of control consumption of healthcare. So now I'm going to the doctor. If my ear itches, I got to go to the emergency room because it's 100% paid by the employer. Oh my goodness, I need this, I need that, I need an x-ray, I need to go this, and they just consume healthcare. So it's a huge problem. This one drug causes that ripples through the entire system of overconsumption. Now, employers have gotten, they've gotten wise to this to say, listen, let's maximize this copay card. If they're going to give $20,000 on this drug, we're going to set it up so that they have to go through this pharmacy. We're going to use all $20,000 on the card, and we're not going to let any of that apply to the deductible. So now the cost of Humira has gone down, but it's still an expensive drug. You're still talking about $40,000 a year that needs to be paid. Well, in order to have these expensive drugs and to have, and this is editorial in nature, I just want to tell you this little part parenthetical is not, this is editorial in nature. When the ACA came out and the $1 million lifetime cap was stripped away and drugs were allowed to be, really, really expensive, the manufacturers were told they have to help people who can't afford the drug. So there are patient assistance programs put in place. So this is the next part of the war. The employers are saying, if there's patient assistance programs in place, we're not going to put these medications on our formulary. We are going to only take these patients and pay for that medication if they fail getting a patient assistance program. For Humira, it is a household income, a household of 4, family income less than $157,000, which in America is everybody. I mean, most everybody. So if somebody doesn't make $157,000 household income and they get prescribed Humira and they don't have insurance coverage, they can go to AbbVie, provide their income tax return, their W-2, whatever verification AbbVie requires, their doctor's note that they need to be on this drug, and AbbVie will provide the medication free of charge. So that's the war going on. These are the trends of what happens of pharma's advertising, having payers pay for these drugs, the payers trying to fight back, with the assistance programs and getting on the patient assistance programs and copay cards. And so that is a constant struggle within the industry. Right now, the majority of these drugs are still being paid by employers because that shift hasn't happened yet. I think it's going to happen over the next 18 months. The next thing, really interesting thing in brand naming expensive drugs, is the hospital. So who's here has heard of 340B pricing? Anybody heard of 340B? All right, 1, 2. Okay, so 340B pricing is if you have a qualified clinic, qualified pharmacy. This is to help low-income people. But what happens is every hospital system ends up getting a 340B pharmacy, either their own or associated. And when a patient has drugs prescribed, the hospital will actually bill the payer full price for the drugs and then take the discount off on the 340B and end up making a lot more money than the manufacturer even on the drug. So there's a bunch of other perverse games going on in the background from a provider standpoint against pharma, saying, hey, you guys are, pharma's the big bad guy, and so we're going to lower the price, and gee, we're going to lower the price a little bit. But what happens is they end up lowering the price a tiny bit and then taking all this money out of the 340B system. Because the way 340B works is there's a federal law, and that's why the 340B nomenclature. There's a federal law which says if you dispense these drugs out of a federally qualified clinic and 340B qualified pharmacy, the manufacturer needs to replace that product. And so it's not actual money that's flowing back and forth from the pharma manufacturer, it's free product. So those are the games, Tim, that I see happening and some of the craziness that's trending in the industry.
And you see momentum again, in some of this, obviously with your own company growing but
bet.
other things is happening as well?
You bet. This transparency movement is happening. I mean, and we're all part of it. Carl's been doing this for years. Before I ever even got in the industry, Carl's been pushing these things, and I know a lot
Was his beard have color back then?
Yes. And he spoke with a New York accent. But it is transparency. And, it was interesting that Dr. Johnson and I were speaking about, what to title this, right? How can true transparency really change the industry? If you were able to strip away and just talk about drugs, right? Just pharmaceuticals. If you were to strip away everything that's going on in the copay card and patient assistance world, and in the 340B world, and in the rebates and the spread pricing, and the drugs were procured from the pharmacy and given to the patient and billed to the employer, and everybody knew what was going on, the system would save $75 billion. And every one of the Empire PBMs would still be able to make money, lots of it.
Wow.
Mr. Schuessler.
But I will tell you, in that ecosystem, just the way the physicians, you all are kind of paying the price. In this scenario, it's the employer, but it's also the pharmacies pay the price.
Oh, pharmacies are just hammered in this, no question.
Which is why you don't see independent pharmacies anymore. It's true.
Carl, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Jackie, it's good to see you. I've been on here one time before I remember you. We put a whole program together for community pharmacists through Mitigate Partners, and I'm glad to share with anybody later. I'm not going to take y'all's time up. But I want to say one thing about what Bill said, too. In the 340B, the whole thing spun out of Canada, and the hospital saw Canada getting these drug prices, and they created the code, like you said, the revenue code 340B, where the other hospitals who treated either they were critical access hospitals, less than 25 beds, or DISH hospital, disproportionate share, treat a lot of Medicaid. Like our client, the DeSoto Hospital, this received a lot of national attention. It was a DISH hospital. Now, Bill, they lost their DISH status. Dr. Gross, great DPC doc, most of you know, I know Dr. Johnson knows, they're trying to get it back. But we did this whole 340B strategy. So the only reason I'm sharing all this is those hospitals wanted to have the ability to get the drugs at those prices and take care of the indigent. And that was the initial purpose. Then what you saw is a profit center at the hospitals, and they started buying oncology practices like crazy. I watched it happen in my hometown of Macon, Georgia. I know most of y'all thought I was from New York, but I'm really not. Thank you for laughing. I can't see. I'm just thinking. So anyway, the point I'm getting at is the drugs like Avastin that Bill said that are regularly $600. I've seen Duke charge $22,000 for that drug. And so they were doing that, buying the oncology practice solely for the chemo and the drugs because they could make a fortune on them. So they just started buying these practices. So that's a trend that's happened. I think that's important to point out. So that's why you've seen a lot of these physician practices that prescribe those kind of things, or especially the oncology. That's why the hospitals have acquired a lot of those type practices. That's one reason why. And I don't know how longer the 340B is going to be there. There are a lot of pharmacy consultants. Bill knows one of the ones I like to use, that everyone doesn't know how long that's going to stay out there. But I think Bill made a good point there. And as far as the transparency movement, just my opinion, Patient Rights Advocate, who y'all, if y'all don't know, look up patientrightsadvocate.org. And they're the ones that filmed a few of our clients and shared them with the White House and HA Secretary Azar. They were behind all this transparency movement. But with the new administration, and I'm not getting political with anyone on this call, I don't think you're going to see any push for transparency, in my opinion. So I think it's screaming for us to do a better job. And then one last point. I want all y'all to write down this name, Daniel Best. If anybody knows who Daniel Best is, I'll shave my beard tonight. No Googling over there, Spooner. No Googling.
I grew up with Daniel Best.
Oh, you did?
The razor out, bud.
Real quick, this is important. This is the cartel, guys. I'm not making this up. We were at DeSoto Memorial Hospital doing our benefit education meetings on like November the 8th of 2018. And Dr. Gross came in and he goes, Carl, did you hear about what happened to Daniel Best? And I said, Dr. Gross, and he's the direct primary care doctor that Dr. Johnson knows. I said, I figure like I'm supposed to know that name, but I'm not sure. It's Trump's drug czar. And I said, okay, all right. He goes, well, he died last night of multiple blunt force injuries. Lived in, I think, in a real fancy apartment complex in Washington, D.C., was in the farm industry at one time, and he found a way to save Medicare $5 billion. And then all of a sudden, dead. So I know y'all are going to think I'm some conspiracy fruitcake. And no, I did not march on the Capitol a month ago. I promise I wasn't in that group. But I'm here to tell you, look it up. It was never talked about at all in the news. Absolutely a hit, in my opinion, 100%. You don't take $5 billion out of the pharma industry in that kind of role. And I'm just telling you, go look it up. Really strange. All of a sudden it's dead after that was announced, $5 billion. Here's to y'all.
You seem to be laying a little bit lower than normal, Carl. Other questions for Bill?
Bill, it's Jane. I just want to ask about Drexy because I go and I look up Drexy fairly often for my clients. The way it works, you mentioned, is it because you're actually giving them the pharmacy price and then Drexy just has a per RX fill, like a little profit margin on that, or how does it work?
We are purely admin fee based. So, with Kent and with that crew, there's a subscription model and they pay on a per member per month base. And the price that somebody goes and sees is the price that we pay the pharmacy.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. All right. So it's just PMPM for you guys. That's your profit margin. And then you're just passing that through the actual cost, that the pharmacy pays.
That
like
we
wholesale, basically. Oh, okay.
Right. And the thing is, so let me talk about that for just a second. So when you go into the pharmacy and you say, hey, I want the cash price, and they give you this crazy number, right? Like atorvastatin calcium. Hey, what's the cash price? Oh, that's $90 for that. Why is that $90? Caremark has given it to me for $47 and Drexy gives it to me for $2. Why is it $90? It's $90 because the contract that the pharmacies have with the PBMs don't allow them to have a cash price lower than the PBM price. And because the PBM price has so much margin in it, so much spread, they can't actually bring the cash price down. So what happens is pharmacists are really great people and they're wonderful. You go talk to the pharmacists, you walk in and say, listen, and they will, I have seen pharmacists get on the computer and search, discount cards and this and that, and free programs for patients, all sorts of stuff. And they'll talk about, the pharmacists end up knowing about GoodRx. They've done an amazing job advertising. GoodRx has about a 50% gross margin. So if you go look up the price if you go to drexy.com/search and you type in a drug and you find the drug price and you go to GoodRx, you'll usually find about a 50% gross margin in the high velocity generics. You'll find similar prices on brand names because GoodRx has worked out a deal, get rebates back for the brand name drugs that they run through their programs. But there's about 50% gross margin in there. But a pharmacist will go and say, hey, listen, it's better for you to go pay, rather than $3 for a script, it's better to go pay $6 or $8 for the script than it is to pay $90 for the script. And if they're just trying to help out the patients, but it's hard to know and it's hard to get the actual price.
And then do you have a recommendation for like when there's a drug, like today I have a lady, she has factor 5 and her prescription's like $500. And it's, looking to put her on something alternative.
What is it
That
called?
might be the one thing that keeps me, that's going to keep her on Cobra or an ACA plan instead.
What is it called? Factor 5?
Factor
Yeah,
5.
it's for hemophilia. It's for a hemophiliac, and no, there's no alternative for it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they're kind of stuck.
Yeah, I would go if it's a brand name drug and you go to Drexy, you'll find and it has a program available. You'll find a link to the sign up sheet for that program.
Like the patient assistance, like how we find on GoodRx at the bottom.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing, is checking that. She's going to check on that tomorrow. Doing a little homework from both sides. We're going to meet back up tomorrow. So
Good.
Okay.
Be careful, anybody that, and I guess I can't read, I'm blind. Jane, be careful. And Bill, you know this, I'm sure. This whole carbon specialty out and doing PAPs and MAPs and all that cool stuff. You got to be real careful. And a lot of these benefit advisors, I mean, I have never carved any out, and I've got a school district with 3 hemophiliacs, Jackie. $3 million drugs. And when you carve it out, it's not covered by the health plan. So if they don't get the MAP or the PAP, and Bill made a great point, but I'm here to tell you, not everybody's going to get the MAPs and the PAPs. It happens. And when it happens, that employer, if they don't know how to do this and build these plans right, and the broker doesn't know, y'all know that stop loss doesn't cover that drug. There's exceptions, but then you're stuck. So the guy couldn't get Humira, or the woman, and you're stuck with 50 grand out of your pocket as an employer with no stop loss protection. So you have to be, I'm just sharing it. I don't know how many advisors on the phone. Just be careful on that. It's a very, very tricky thing to do. So just be careful.
And Carl, you work in the large market, correct? The large group market, like self-insured kind of market, if I remember correctly.
It's Dane, groups are on my fair cost plan, 140 employees, 157 employees, 185 employees, and 6,500 employees. So I would tell you I'm mostly and we're doing more work in some of the bigger ones, but we're at a couple hundred, whatever. And I've got,
Large mid-market.
I mentor a lot of, I'm in the bad market, but yes, it does. But I don't know what you're in, but I'm glad to talk with you offline. If you want to have a conversation, I'm glad to speak to you.
Yeah. We play in a very individual, boutique-ish one-on-one, more of a, one-on-one. Like I put in about 300 just individuals last year, one-on-one. Okay. Right. So I'm not working in the large group market. It's a whole opposite end of the spectrum. But you were talking about Sharon earlier. I did some quick math today. In about 300 clients, I saved them about $1.7 million in premium. So that's significant work out there. Yeah.
You're the hero. That's the tough work and
one at a time.
Be commended. I mean, that's, I tell you, in our business, the smaller the groups, a lot of them, the 1,000-person groups, as much work as a 100-person group.
I know. Right.
And so I really commend you. Thank you for your service and your hard work, because that segment of the population needs a lot of help, and the smaller companies need a ton of help. Exactly.
Yeah. No one wants to play in that market. So somehow I survived it, and now it's getting better. So yeah, there's plenty of brokers to work the larger market.
Well, I don't know if I'm the only one here who has 4 kids under the age of 12, but I'm gonna wrap this up so I can get home and give them all hugs tonight. But
nice.
I do really appreciate all the discussion. It has been just a fantastic talk. I think the pharmacy world is somewhat of a microcosm of the rest of healthcare that we need to work on building free market, transparent tools and services to change the industry. And so this has just been great. Thanks, Bill. You've been super enlightening. Our next month's meeting is we've not nailed down the guest, but we have a guest in mind, and we're hoping to get that out to you soon. But it's going to be especially for employers or looking at the employer perspective of this the opportunities in the free market. And so be ready for that. You'll see emails coming out soon. You will see the first email in our from our Google group coming out within the next 24 hours. And you'll be able to respond to that whenever you want to. And Tim is going to wrap us up and go over our goals and give us a call to action.
Again, I just want to say thanks to Bill. It's always infuriating and enlightening to listen to your information and to realize as a provider at the front lines that the more leadership we show and the more we take back ownership of this, hopefully we can carve some of that back out for us. But more importantly, we can give care to the people that we want to take care of. So thanks for your information and just being with us here, tonight. At the end of last meeting, I kind of threw out three, kind of specific goals for us as an organization, and we're trying to make progress in each of these. But it was to, number one, to get 20 plus providers that are very keyed into providing this ecosystem of care for our environment, with them providing transparency on their own website, and how we can utilize this Google sheet that Kendrick is going to throw out is to start bouncing patients towards these folks that are doing that. So that was the first thing we wanted to do. The second thing was on the buyer side to try and bring 50,000 lives into it. And I'm really happy that Carl is actually, trading in his Georgia accent to come west and, bring his lives to the Arizona chapter here and support us like this. I mean, it's, I think he's got to go by way of Alabama, which is one of his favorite states and favorite college teams. So I appreciate him doing that. And, the other thing that, we wanted to do is bring an impactful speaker, someone with great knowledge each month to encourage dialogue and to have conversation. And Bill certainly filled that boat for us today. And as we will look forward towards the next month, we're looking at a topic that that we're seeing a lot of out there, and we're hearing a lot of from all ends, from the employer side, from we talked about it. Kendrick was talking about his his case today, and it's called redirection. And redirection in healthcare, we want to take a look at this and say, all right, is this efficient? Is this cost savings? Is this forward movement? But have a deeper dive into what redirection really is. We see actual companies developing to do redirection. And, taking a deep dive into redirection, I think is going to be kind of fun, because what we're doing is getting hopefully a little bit closer to healthcare, but let's take and examine it from all sides. And hopefully we're going to have our speaker on this is going to be able to kind of enlighten us on what some of the things that they've done, but also from a provider standpoint, what we can do, to make that process a little bit easier in terms of redirection. And lastly, when we send out this list, we need more people on our team, more people that are passionate about bringing transparent healthcare to Arizona, and we could even say and beyond with Carl here. So if you have people, let Dr. Johnson know. Dr. Johnson, you're going to be the keeper of the overall list? Yeah,
I think Melina will help me with that too. But you can send me a message.
Right. And so, we'll keep it so it's not going to be a spam thing. This is be for our information sharing. for questions that we have, and to keep us better connected in between meetings. So I know I always get excited, on Wednesday night to see everyone, and it's kind of enlightening to hear, today some of the success stories. And let's go ahead and build on some more, and we'll see everybody next month.